Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of MGR Unplugged. Today I'm recording this on Thursday, October 3rd. Not sure when you're going to listen to it, but just for the record, in case we refer to any events, date specific, you know that we are recording this on October 3rd, 2019. Today we have, last week we actually discussed longevity and some issues that were more of lifestyle things, and I think it was pretty interesting. It's based on books and things that we're reading right now, and it's a topic that I actually like quite a bit. If you missed that episode and you are remotely interested in living longer, I recommend that you listen to it, but specifically go to the show notes too, because we link to a couple of books and articles that are very specific from people that actually are experts in the topic, unlike us just talking about it. So do that. Just go to last week's episode and take a look at it and see if you like it. But today is actually more back to our marketing expertise, and specifically going to discuss a little bit more of advertising metrics. And, we deal with a lot of campaigns, and we're just going to discuss or comment on mostly questions that we get from our clients over time as far as how advertising is measured, and campaign results, and how we measure traffic to the websites and all that stuff. And it's getting a little more confusing every day. Even though technology is improving, it gets a little more confusing. And I forgot who said, I always like this quote saying, half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is that I don't know which half.
I was gonna say that. I was gonna mention that quote because you always say it. I know it's your favorite.
I always.
Quote.
I think it's Wanamaker, John Wanamaker. He was a pioneer advertising person from the 1800s. He's famous for, I think I'm pronouncing the name right, Wanamaker. But
the thing that's amazing to me is,
by the way, the other person talking is David Gill.
Yes, hello. The thing that's amazing to me is that I thought that by now, it's funny because we were having an issue yesterday with one of our tracking things for one of our clients, and I was saying, why in 2019, it's going to be 2020 in a few months.
I know, you were getting upset with me.
I was upset. I was more just venting. I was like, why is it still so hard to track things in 2020? The internet tracking has been around for 25 plus years now.
And that is the core of the discussion, because even though we have many more or much more technology these days to be able to track everything, we also have many more what we call touch points. And it's hard to, not so much the tracking, which also is difficult, but also the attribution. Is who gets the credit.
The tracking, the attribution, people still use metrics that I think are overrated, or some cases I think a lot of metrics are useless, but people
and they don't understand metrics. Right. So we're going to get into that now in a second, but so the core of it is that you're a typical business. It doesn't have to be e-commerce, but let's say that you're a business and you have some kind of e-commerce component on your business, meaning that you sell something through your website, and it could be a hotel selling rooms, or it could be a retailer selling T-shirts or widgets or whatever. It doesn't matter. Or simply a website that just is an informational website where you're not selling anything, just basically having a website.
How do you know your marketing is working? And what should you look at to make sure that it is working?
But it gets more complicated when you actually do campaigns. Obviously, you just want to track visitors to your website, who goes where, which pages are more visited. I think that's pretty well covered. I mean,
that's not what matters. What matters is the money. And that's what people care about.
Obviously, exactly. And especially when you get to advertising, that's where it becomes critical. How you spend your money and what ROI is each advertising channel giving you to determine whether you put more money there or less, or nothing at all.
I think the biggest challenge is not just with attribution because there's attribution models, and I'll let you talk about that because I know you love talking about various attribution models, but it's how do you attribute things that are unattributable? Like, how do you account for brand when you're looking at performance marketing? How do you account for this piece of content? It's like, okay, maybe this piece of content, like, I think one thing that was popular a few years ago was like quote unquote viral marketing. That was like a big thing for a while. But really, there would be a lot of things that go viral, and a lot of people see it, but it doesn't actually turn into sales.
Right.
And obviously, in some cases it can, but it's like, okay, how do you know that you did this viral marketing campaign and 1 million people saw your ad or whatever? but they didn't buy anything directly. But then because then they saw that ad and they kept you in the back of their mind, and then they saw a couple ads for you, and then 6 months later they ended up buying. You have no idea that they actually came from that viral marketing.
Exactly.
But they really did.
And that, to be honest, that will never be able to be. I mean, even the major advertising providers and platforms tell you measuring advertising is never going to be 100% accurate. I'm not saying that we are the 50%. I don't know which one it works or whatever, but you can be fairly accurate. But the main thing is that you need to kind of take a step back and then look at the bigger picture,
Right.
and start looking at, well, how much money you actually invest. And it's not a matter of spending money in advertising. You're always investing. It's no different than any other investment. Whether you pay for a trade show booth or whatever form of marketing you do, you're always putting some money with the hope or with the goal of getting the money in return exponentially, whether it's 2, 3, 4 times what you spend, and that's your investment. So in the case of advertising, it's just exactly the same, and obviously each company knows their own gross numbers, net numbers, customer lifetime values, and things like that, so they can see whether that expense in general, the advertising budget, returns customers that way. So to go back to the origin, we'll start discussing, okay, well, every website will normally have some kind of analytics software, and honestly, the majority of them use Google Analytics. If it's properly installed, that should be sufficient for the average website to just track, visitors and where they come from, and how many are their referrals versus direct traffic and search engine traffic and so forth. So you're just trying to see, it's like the electronic.
Bless me. Sorry.
That was David sneezing, by the way. If you hear some slurping, it's me because he also brought me a nice coffee from Starbucks. Anyway, so back to the analytics. If you analytics is almost like the electronic or the website version of typical. You go to Disneyland or anything, and you walk through a turnstile, and then they count visitors. They say, okay, every time you turn the thing, they say, okay, I have 1, 2, 3. And some people even have clickers on their hands to count visitors. So now, obviously, we have more sophisticated methods to see where they came from, if they're direct, if they're from the search engine, if they're all that stuff is very basic, and I'm not going to expand to that because our audience already knows it. But then when you get to advertising, you start adding pixels and tracking numbers and tag managers and things like that to the website, and then it gets a little more complicated because now you're trying to see which advertising channel is generating how much revenues and where they come from and attribution windows and all that. So that's where things start getting a little more difficult, specifically because what happens is that they don't necessarily talk to each other, as we know. So if you
and which ones can you trust?
Well,
Because
yeah,
every ad platform, whether it's Facebook or Google or whoever, wants to take credit for
Exactly.
as many sales as possible. So
Right.
that's why you'll always want to use your own system and not rely on just Facebook. It's fine. You can use it as a guide, but at the end of the day, you need to be looking at your own numbers because they're going to try to take credit for everything. And there's always going to be overlap, and that's why it's on you to ultimately try to get the best understanding of your metrics and not rely on Facebook or Google.
and that's what I tell clients. I said, listen, the best way to verify, if you look at your Facebook analytics, let's say that you're running a Facebook campaign, you're running some kind of Google Ads campaign, then you're running a third-party campaign with another company, whether it's DoubleClick or doing your own thing. Then you have some other campaigns that you do on your own, and you have your own tracking created via campaign tracking with Google Ads or anything. Google Campaign Tracker, the UTM. So when you add all the revenues that you see from the different channels, let's say you go to Facebook and you say, oh, my campaign with Facebook made $55,000, and my other campaign with Google Ads made like $60,000, and the other campaign with this other third-party vendor made whatever. Okay, you add it all up and you say, oh yeah, all my marketing made $250,000 this month or this 6 months or whatever. But then you go to your bank account or however you reconcile your revenues and your actual purchases, and you say, I only see 180 or 190, and where's the other 60? Well, that is basically because each channel is taking credit for the same thing twice.
Right.
And that's where things start getting tricky, because you try to eliminate duplicated tracking, and that's why it comes it becomes very important for the person running the marketing campaigns to make sure that there's no overlap with the attribution windows, which will never be exact, but it has to be as close as possible so that you don't have a lot of overlap and everybody claims to have made $50,000 and then in reality you only made 45 versus 50 times 3. So that's the key part that is very difficult. And to be honest, a lot of marketing managers and marketing directors that we work with don't even know how that works. And they just want to present good numbers and they almost prefer not to find the truth because the false truth makes them look better. And that's a little controversial, but that's exactly how things are.
Well, yeah, but it depends on who's running the company. Because
right.
if the person running the company is saying, I want to know the real numbers, they're going to say, I don't care about the BS metrics. I want to know the real numbers.
Absolutely. When you deal with business owners, the conversation is completely different. They are actually very analytical, no pun intended, and they want to see, okay, yeah, you're telling me that I made $100,000 with the campaign, but I look at my bank account and my deposits from the credit card statement, all that stuff, and all the purchases and all that stuff, and they only have half of that.
My favorite is, we're not going to name any names, but we had this is a while back, but we had a client that we absorbed from another agency, and the agency was reporting, I think they called it impression value or something. Yeah. And they said, oh, you got 2 million impressions, and based on that, that's worth $100,000. So we're attributing basically $100,000. It's like, you didn't get $100,000 in sales. They were like, I mean, it was terrible. It was like $5,000 in sales. But they were saying, oh, but it was worth $100,000 impression value. So they would put on their report at the end of the month saying, total value $100,000. It's like, this is complete bullshit.
And an 8-to-1 ROI, that's that. Needless to say, that agency
got fired.
Was basically fired because everything came around.
But that's real, and they try to take advantage because a lot of people don't know. And you hire an agency, you expect to trust them, but if they give you BS metrics and you don't know better,
I always make a lot of analogies with actually investing. And if I go to myself to any my brokerage accounts or anything, or you go to an investment advisor and your financial advisor and you say, okay, yeah, your money made, this stock made this and this stock made that, and you just believe it and you think that you made all this money. And then when it comes down to actually looking at your portfolio, it's like, wait a minute, where is all that? Because I didn't make that money. It's like, okay, you can see it. You can see that I didn't return the 10% that your advisor was telling you, So, but let's get into more specifics here so we can provide some value to our listeners. So, if you have analytics, like Google Analytics on your website, let's say that you run let's be more specific, and you also have a Shopify store. And then you look at your Shopify provides also analytics for their own traffic. Then I think it's very common to look at Google Analytics and say, oh, I had X number of visitors and sessions and this and that, whereas I go to my store analytics, which is in this case Shopify Analytics, and those numbers don't match. So why don't they match? Well, it could be for a variety of reasons, and that's because each metric or each platform measures visitors in a different way. And even within analytics and other systems, you will find different numbers. It's just not possible to do it the same way. For example, Google likes to measure sessions, and they also like to measure visitors. So let's say that you have one visitor that comes to your website directly, and they visit, they go to 2, 3, 4 pages, they leave, then later on, they go to Facebook, and they see an ad for you or something, or even they go to your Facebook page, and then they link to your website, and the same visitor goes to your website, and that's it. So you have, according to analytics, you have one visitor and you have 2 sessions. Basically, the same person came twice.
Right.
However, the cart or the Shopify software may say that you had 2 visits because you have one visit that came one time and another visit that came another time.
And that's the same as like on Facebook. I actually prefer to look at reach versus impressions because basically, the same person could see the same ad more than once. And so a lot of times I think it's actually better to look at, obviously they charge by impressions, but if you want to see how many people actually saw my ad, that's why I prefer the reach metric, because that says how many individual people saw it.
Right. And this is, you were referring to an actual ad. I was just talking about not even an ad, just a normal metric without even having a campaign involved, just looking at your traffic and and you look at one metric like analytics or one system, and you say, so you had like 4,000 visits and 6,000 sessions, and then the other one says, no, you have 7,000 visitors, and it's like, okay, how is this measured? And the other thing is, obviously, to have Google Analytics work properly, you need to have the browser with JavaScript enabled. You have to accept cookies. You have to do a lot of things, which normally are default, unless the person says, no, I don't want to be tracked, or I'm doing incognito browsing, which case you can go to the website 10 times.
But there's a lot of companies like Apple, like we discussed recently. Now they changed it so Safari is only 24-hour cookies.
Exactly.
For cross-domain.
That's what we discussed, that it's going to change the value of the metrics, and we're going to have to work around, like we discussed, doing the tracking at the server level versus at the browser level.
Right. Because the main thing they are doing is the cross-domain, which obviously if you're running ads on any other platform, it's going to be cross-domain. And so that's basically hurting a lot of the Facebook and Google and whatever other ad platform metrics that you're using, that they only let you do cross-domain tracking cookies for 24 hours,
right,
when it used to be 7 days.
Exactly. So that's the numbers that it's important to look at, but also don't get too hung up on whether you did this or that, or you had these visitors versus the other visitors, because there's always going to be discrepancies. Even when you compare two Google platforms like Google Ads, formerly AdWords, basically their advertising campaign, and Google Analytics, which is this analytics software just for traffic, and you compare the two numbers, they actually differ all the time. If you look at people that came for the campaign and you look at AdWords, that is very, very accurate, or Google Ads for the campaigns, because that's based on cookies, tracking pixels, and so forth. They tell you exactly the impressions, the click-throughs, the conversions, everything is very accurate there. If you're just using Google Analytics to see connected to AdWords what it does, then you may have different numbers, because, again, we're looking at sessions versus visitors versus cookies, JavaScript, everything else. So those numbers may not match. And then you can go even further and do enable enhanced e-commerce on Google Analytics to allow you to have different layers of information. But still, analytics is never going to be able to get the numbers for other conversions that happen not immediately, but they happen within a certain conversion window. Your Google Ads platform is set up by your marketing company or by yourself with a certain conversion window for click-through conversions, view-through conversions, and so forth, whereas analytics doesn't keep track of that. So analytics is going to tell you, yeah, this person came from a campaign from Google, and then they clicked on the ad and they purchased. Perfect. That's all a clean purchase. But hardly ever that is the case. You hardly ever see an ad for the first time, click on it, and buy right away. Most of the times, you're going to have to be exposed to that ad or different types of ads multiple times before you actually decide to purchase. And that's when the way you track the purchase is very important, as far as who gets the attribution for the ad or for the purchase, and then how you measure that purchase down the road, as far as how much value you give it based on where people came from. So, I mean, all those things are really critical when it comes to tracking your campaign results. And you can't just look at the surface on a spreadsheet or something and say, okay, well, I got this traffic, or even in an online report. Most of the times, it's like you need to look at multiple sources and start putting the information together and understanding the information.
Yeah, and ultimately, the ultimate truth is the bank account at the end of the day.
Well, yeah, exactly. You know? I mean, even though many times, I mean, sometimes you don't have access to the bank account because it belongs to the investors or it belongs to somebody else or whatever. I mean, you can look at the bank account, but it's just,
I mean, or you could, I say bank account, but it could be like in Shopify's case. Look at the money on Shopify. They can't lie. They're going to tell you the real dollars.
But I just kind of thought about this because in the medical profession, for example, when they need to do some kind of surgery, we know that when they may do an X-ray and the X-ray exposes certain views of the location that needs to be operated on, but then they're not sure. So then they go to an MRI, which is a magnetic resonance imagery, which is different, and then they do an ultrasound that shows a different thing. They actually have different ways to look at a certain part of your body from different technologies, and then the 3-4 different experts get together and say, yes, this is what we need to make the incision, this is what we need to do. And again, I'm not a doctor, but I've been in situations where I've seen that happen with friends' surgery and things like that. And so they cannot just look at an X-ray and say, okay, yeah, we need to do this, because sometimes the X-ray is not going to show the full picture. And then they go to the MRI and show something different, and then the ultrasound shows even something even more different. And so they have to do like different tests to see the full picture. And this is what's happening with analytics and metrics these days, that you have different platforms working together, but each of them is measuring things differently. So you have to have different pieces of information that you can really put together and get the gist of it and understand what is working or not. You can no longer just look at the surface of the headline and say, oh yeah, our campaign did great, or no, it didn't do great. Any comments, David? I thought you were kind of nodding. Or
No, yeah, I think that's a good analogy.
Well, I mean, the other thing is that we're looking at you mentioned something about metrics that work and metrics that don't. I remember back in the days when websites were just content, people were obsessed with time on the page, number of pages, and all that stuff. That to me right now is completely irrelevant. Bounce rates.
Well, it depends on what it is. Time on page, if it's like when I look at time on page, is for example, if we write an article and I want to see, okay, did the people read it, or did they just click on the headline and then they stopped? If I see, okay, here I wrote an article and the average time on page is 3 minutes, okay, that means people are probably reading it.
Right.
If it's 30 seconds, that means they're probably not. So that's when I look at it. But yeah, if you're sending people to a landing page or something, time on page isn't that relevant. You care just more about how many people click through and then end up converting. That's what you care more about.
Right. I mean, exactly. But the people need to understand. You cannot just look at the average time on page and say, oh no, people are staying on our website. We don't have any stickiness or anything, or they only go to 1.2 pages and then they leave, or any of those metrics, or the bounce rate is like 90%. Everybody leaves. Okay, let's pause for a second and see what each of those metrics means, so we don't go crazy for something that is totally irrelevant. Time on page means, as you said, the time to spend on the page. Some pages are just a doorway. They can just say, land here, go somewhere else. So, or they only have headlines on the pages, and then like blog articles and blog pages, they have headlines on the page, on the home page, and then they say, okay, click here, click there, whatever. So the purpose of that page is to send people to another page, not so much to read that page. So,
right. I think time on page, website average time on page, when they just take the average of all, is like a completely worthless metric.
And today's,
you want to look at it on a page by page basis.
Right. And today's browsing, the attention span today, people go to a website, whether they come from mobile, which is more than 50% of the times now, majority of the time is mobile or tablets, or on a desktop. And normally there's like a touch and go. It's like a hit and run, whatever analogy you want. They go look at something quick and take off. They look something quick and take off. So they stay a few seconds. I can go to any site where there is news, information, sports. I look something quickly and then take off. There's nothing else that I need to see. I just wanted to see one quick thing. So, but those 10 seconds, 15 seconds were very effective to me because I was there. Now, the other thing is the number of pages that you go through. If your website, the goal, and that's something that is good for advertisers, and that's what we are seeing so much clickbait and tricks for websites to show to advertisers that they have more pages. Have you ever been to one of these photo galleries or things when you say,
that's a difference.
Check out the top 10 places to vacation in the U.S., the most exotic destinations, and you go there.
Different topic.
Yeah, well,
but they're optimizing for page views.
Yes, but that's because of advertising. They want to make sure you can have easily a list of the top 10 places to vacation in the U.S. and you have a page where you have number 1, 2, 3, 4, all 10 on one page. But no, they do it so you have the first one. Oh, you can go to Hawaii and this and that. Click on our page. You can go to this. So guess what? You want to see the 10? It's a 10-page view.
Then they can serve you 10 ads. And it also helps with, I forget what company. There's been a few media companies that got in trouble because basically they were acquisitions. And they were acquired based on the idea that they had 100 million page views. But they said, really, it should be like 10 million.
So that's the fraudulent part of the advertising. When you see that they send you to see a photo gallery or top 10 this or that or whatever, and then you have to flip through 10 different photo galleries, and then you see the navigation, the URL changes each time. That's because they want to balloon just basically increase their page views
Right.
for no reason. Well,
But
that
on
could
the
be exactly
advertising
one article.
side, or I should say on the sales side, the other side, you don't want to have a ton of pages because obviously that's a ton of friction.
Right.
You want to have at most 1 or 2 pages. If you have more than 2 pages, that's not going to be an effective funnel.
Which leads me to the other most, what I think is the most misunderstood metric on Google Analytics, which is the bounce rate. People think that having a 90% bounce rate or 100% bounce rate is really bad, and having a 30% bounce rate is beautiful. Okay, let's understand what a bounce rate is and how Google describes it. Because not all pages, basically a bounce rate is when you come to the website, land on a page, whatever page is, could be a whatever, any information page, homepage, whatever, and then you leave after that. Okay, first of all, there's nothing wrong with that. You can go to see the scores of a game or something, see the score and leave. That's it. Bounce rate 100%, but no, you saw what you wanted to see. Secondly, you can be taken to a landing page from a campaign. Now, the whole purpose of that campaign is to stay on one long conversion optimized landing page. So you read it and read it and read it, and then finally you click through and go somewhere else to make your purchase or learn more or buy this or whatever, or book something. Okay, bounce rate 100%, but you actually had a landing page that did the job, and then you didn't go anywhere else on the website. You just basically bounced off the website. Third example, you have a campaign where you have people trying to book something or reserve something or download something, whatever. You have a page that is with a form that says fill out this form and download this white paper.
Right. We have lead pages where we send people and all they have to do is fill in an email.
Exactly.
And the bounce rate is 90-something%.
So the whole purpose of a page of a campaign is to send people to a place where they leave their email address for future newsletters. And then they do that, which is exactly your conversion, which in this case is leave me your email address or fill out this RFP or a request for proposal or quote or something. And then they leave. That was the whole purpose. Okay, well, that page is going to show bounce rate 100%. No, it doesn't matter. You got what you wanted. Whereas other pages is like, oh, no, this page was here, but then they went somewhere else or whatever. And then it's
right. Well,
the state of the page all this time or, you know.
Where you don't want a bounce rate would be like if someone goes to your homepage. Hopefully, if they go to your homepage, then they'll go and you have some information on your homepage. If they're more interested, they go to internal pages. If you have a high bounce rate on your homepage, then maybe that's something to look at. You say, okay, well, we want people to go to our internal pages. It's very context dependent. I think the big mistake that people make is, like we said, like looking at the site averages. That's so useless because I don't care what someone's time on page is for a landing page as long as they're converting. For an article, I do want them to have a long time on page because I want them to read it. That's why I write the article, you know, and if they're not reading it, that means it's probably not a good article and I should look at why they're not reading it. You know, so it's super context dependent on the page. Looking at site averages is really useless. It's like saying, you know, like when you look at if you have one person that makes 10 grand a year and another person makes 100 and you say, well, the average is 55,000. It's like, well, okay, that's not even close to what either of them makes. You know what I mean? So that's why I think site average is just terrible.
Right. But that's the thing. I mean, there's a lot of metrics. If you go behind the numbers, you start understanding what the numbers mean. But when you don't really understand the numbers and you just want to look good versus be good, then you start looking at, like even visitors. I mean, you say, hey, last month we had 100,000 visitors, and this month we only have 80,000. So what? I'd rather have one visitor that buys my entire inventory than 100 visitors that are just browsing around. So are we looking at quality versus quantity, or
right?
You know,
it's easy. You can get lots of low quality impressions.
If you want traffic, if your goal is to look good and just show your boss or whatever that you're having a lot of traffic, there's lots of techniques you can do to just drive traffic to your website, and then they don't buy anything, they don't do anything, they leave, whatever. Yeah, but every month we have more and more visitors. It's like, okay, at some point you're going to realize where is the money, okay? Because, I'd rather have like 50 people that come and purchase, and then I'm sold out. I don't need any more visitors than having 100,000 visitors per month that are buying nothing. Yeah, it's going to look good. The numbers are increasing. All that stuff is great. But at the end of the day, you're going to shut the business because you didn't sell a single widget. You know, so the point is that numbers are just numbers. It's what's behind the numbers that matter. And I would expect marketing managers and directors and business owners to understand that there's a lot of information that the numbers are just not showing, and that you need to fill in the blanks yourself and make it effective for your business. So, but aside from that, I wanted to also go through a little more of the marketing strategies too, and describe a little bit what happens, which is very frequently with the typical situation where you buy something on one website, but you actually pay through another website, and that actually happens a lot of times. It happens with pretty much all the hospitality industry, when hotels, you go to a hotel website, and then especially independent hotels, where you go to a hotel website and you want to book a room, and then you're sent to a third-party booking engine. So for the customer, if it's done properly, it's a seamless transition. They still see the booking engine with the same branding, colors, look and feel, fonts, everything as the main website, but they are in a completely different website, meaning different URLs. So it's a different domain as far as the tracking is concerned. So it's very important that when you set the tracking for your campaigns and for everything, that the second domain, which is the purchasing place, domain, booking engine, whatever, matches the information that you have on your main website, which is where people landed from your campaign. So that's what is called cross-domain tracking. And usually when you have a Google Tag Manager or GTM and it's properly installed with all the proper layers and everything, it does that for you. Basically, you send people to a website. From the ad, it tracks that you went there, and the same GTM code is installed on the second-party website, the second domain. And with the cross-domain tracking, they're both talking to each other. So if the person actually, or the customer, ends up buying something, booking something, and makes the purchase, then the GTM gets the information and sends it back to the website, or to your campaign, and then says, yes, this is a conversion, and it's worth exactly this money to the penny. And that's how it works. Now, a lot of times we find out that, when we get all new customers, that they have campaigns where they set up the GTM very nicely on their own website, and they don't realize that they never set it up on the booking website, or on the purchasing website, or the shopping cart, or the other domain that is actually where the transaction is taking place. And that also affects a lot of e-commerce websites where they mask the domain, like Shopify or something like that, that they have their own Shopify checkout platform, and is different than the actual domain for the website. So they sell all these purchases and everything. They sell all this merchandise, but then they can't really track properly whether the purchase was attributed to this campaign or not. Obviously, a purchase is a purchase, a sale is a sale, and the numbers will be there. So we're not talking about losing sales. We're talking about losing the tracking of how that sale was created, where it came from as far as the campaign. If it was attributed to a campaign that you spend money to advertise and somebody bought, or if it was just something that somebody landed on your website, liked the product, and ended up just buying it. And that's something that, David finds a lot when he deals with most of our e-commerce clients.
Yeah, I mean, you want to have a balance between obviously. It's hard to tell a lot of times whether, because a lot of people, for example, this happens all the time. They see an ad on Facebook, they click on it, then they leave. And this gets into the attribution windows and all that. But say it's outside of, 7 days or whatever. But then they say, oh, yeah, I really wanted to buy that product. And then they search on Google. And then they click on the Google. Maybe it's not even a Google ad, just an organic search. And so it looks like, oh, this person just found us organically and bought. But really it's because they saw ads from somewhere else. And those situations happen all the time. Or it could be like we talk about the double attribution taking credit. Like if you click on a Facebook ad and if someone clicks on a Facebook ad, it goes to the website and all of a sudden they're being tracked, and then they go to YouTube and they watch a YouTube video, but you have retargeting YouTube videos based on people who visit your website, and then they see a YouTube ad, they click on that, and then they buy. YouTube and Google are taking the credit, but really they originally came from a Facebook, and then they both could end up taking credit. It looks like two purchases, but really it's just one. You know what I'm saying? That happens all the time. That's the challenge. That's why at the end of the day, it's better to have your own in-house tracking and analytics and have one system that you really trust than relying on the Facebook reporting or the Google reporting, things like that.
Well, more than in-house tracking, which obviously no company is going to have their own
system.
I don't
mean in-house. I mean
you need to have an in-house team or expert or some third-party agency that knows everything that is taking place.
In-house isn't the right term. I meant more like an independent system, whether
Auditor,
it
right.
be some Google Analytics or some other analytics software. There's a ton of them out there. I wouldn't just rely on like Facebook's reporting. It's going to be mostly accurate, but there's always going to be a margin of error, and especially if you're doing only Facebook ads and then maybe some Google ads here and there, okay, maybe for the most part you're good. But when you start doing Facebook and Pinterest and Snapchat and Google search and YouTube videos and Google display, and then you also are advertising on a podcast, then the attribution gets insane.
Exactly.
And that's why it gets much more complex.
Right. Let me throw another curveball to your attribution complications. Normally, normally when you set up an attribution, you have what is called the attribution window, which means that you have two kinds of attribution. Two major options. You have the click-through and you have the view-through. Click-through is very clear. You see an ad, you click on it, and then obviously it's attributed to you. View-through is when you see an ad, you don't even click on it, but it's an impression, and then they call it an impression-assisted conversion, which is amazingly is very common. So
it's like if you see a billboard.
Yeah, it's like the electronic version or the website version of a billboard effect. You drive on the freeway, you see a billboard, you read something, hopefully while still keeping an eye on the road, and then you have an impression, and then if you remember something, then you go to your office, house, whatever, and then you end up buying or doing something because you saw the billboard.
It's funny, I actually I forget if I read it or listened to a podcast, but it was the founder of Tuft & Needle, which is a local Phoenix mattress brand, and they were talking about how they started doing a billboard campaign. I see them all over the place in Phoenix and in other areas, and they were saying that going from, they were only digital marketing, right? They were a D2C company, and then they started expanding to physical, and they said, man, figuring out the tracking and attribution for billboards was like a whole endeavor. But they said they came with a pretty unique method that they almost had to invent because they said there wasn't really any tracking.
It doesn't, yeah. They give you impressions based on traffic through the highways.
Right, but obviously because they sell everything online, so they said, okay, how do we know that this person saw our billboard and then because of the billboard ended up buying? And so that's an extreme case. Most people aren't buying billboards these days. I mean, there are, but in the digital world, people aren't necessarily buying billboards. But that's an example where maybe I see billboards and it's more of a branding thing, and maybe that, like we talk about subliminal advertising, like it makes you think about them. It's not like you're converting right then and there. Obviously you're driving probably, so don't pull out your phone and buy a mattress. But yeah, I mean, like it's the same thing with like a Super Bowl commercial. It's not like you never see a Super Bowl commercial that says, 20% off, buy now. No, it's all branding. It's all, you see the Budweiser with the dog and the horses. They're not trying to get you to convert on a beer right there. It's branding. So how do you attribute that? That's the tricky part.
Well, that's the thing. Basically, when you have a click-through conversion, means that normally you have two attribution windows. The click-through is more of an action where you actually see a banner ad or some kind of ad, and you click through it and go to the website, landing page, whatever, but you don't actually buy the product just yet. You research everything else, but then you leave. So, but we are already tracking that click-through person. We have a cookie, basically, on the tags. Usually take care of that. They follow you, and then there's cross-device tracking, all that stuff. So that pixel is going to follow you no matter whether you're on your phone or your tablet or whatever. That Amazon is perfect for that stuff. You see those things everywhere. So the click-through usually has a 30-day or 28-day conversion window. Basically, it's somewhere around 4 weeks. So basically, you click on an ad and you don't buy anything, and then you buy something from the ad within a 28-day window, 30 days sometimes. Then you get the attribution for the sale, even though it doesn't happen immediately. Fair or not, that's how it usually is the standard, and all the advertisers do that. The view-through conversion is a little more tricky, because the view-through means that you may be scrolling through your Facebook newsfeed, or you may be scrolling on a website, and then in that ad on the right-hand side that you don't even click on, you may not even see it or look at it, it stays in front of you for like 2-3 seconds, then it's considered an impression. And then if for whatever reason you go and buy something later as a result of from that same company, but it could be from a different ad or from a different impression, from a different campaign, then the original ad for the view through gets credit for that conversion, assuming that it happens within your conversion window, what is called the look back window, which is usually, it could be 1 day or 7 days.
But it depends on your attribution model, right?
Well,
because it's
exactly.
they get a credit for a piece of it, depending on how you do it. It's not like they get the credit for the full sale.
Well, that would be another topic too. But we know, for example, third-party advertisers that have a view-through conversion that is set up for 7 days. And this is in the travel industry. So
I think it's pretty common. 7 days is the most common for view-through.
well, the default for Facebook is 1 day, and then you can increase it. But I think 7 days nowadays is too much. But this is my conflict.
Yeah.
There's a lot of overlap in there.
You see so many ads, too.
If you advertise, let's say just travel, for example. If you advertise for travel, a hotel or a special offer or something in the Bahamas, and then you have a third-party agency that is putting banners over the place, and then they have that banner showing on websites and all that stuff. And then I also have paid campaigns, display banners that are from Google Display or Facebook ads or whatever. So the person is coming to the website and is clicking on the ads and all that stuff. And then that same banner from another agency is showing on another website. But then when the person is clicking on the ad, it clicks on the ad that came from Google, for example. Or maybe they just went direct to the website. They already know the website. They just went directly to a URL, they highly bookmarked, and they go ahead and book. So you have a direct booking that is attributed to the campaign, but the original agency that showed the ad, and if it's within the, let's say, 7-day conversion window, takes credit for that conversion too. So they say, well, 7 days is normal. You know, it's pretty common, and we try to avoid overlapping and other stuff, but it's impossible. It's impossible to avoid overlapping in those cases. So that's why it's important to have a full picture of the whole campaign and how much money you're spending versus how much money you're making. But you can't be so granular as far as going down to the penny, which is with each particular marketing channel, because you will never get the full picture. You're gonna get lost in the numbers versus being really effective with your marketing. And the other thing that you were talking about is the attribution models. So there used to be that most of the standard attribution models are what is called last click attribution, meaning whoever is the last click, whether it's direct traffic, search engine, organic, or any campaign or whatever, gets full credit for the conversion, which is just as bad as first click, which is the opposite. So if I have an ad on Google, for example, PPC, and I'm looking for, I don't know, best watches on sale or something, and then I see an ad and I click on it, and then I don't do anything. I go to the company, I don't do anything, and then I go back and, 3 days later or something, I start looking for watches somewhere else, and I end up buying one, then the first ad is going to take full credit for my conversion, whereas after that I probably went to a tons of different places and did more research and came from different places. So whether it's first click or last click, it really doesn't show you the full picture of the multi-touch points that you've had with through your conversion, through your booking or purchasing journey. So we at MGR like to use more of what is called weight-based attribution, in which it's almost like a linear attribution where we give a certain percentage of value to the first touch and a certain percentage of value to the last touch, and then we also give value to the ones in between, whether it's an email or a banner or a text ad or whatever. So we kind of spread the value of the ads through the different channels.
Weight based, meaning it's weighted. So if one ad is just a view through and another one is actually a click, the one that got a click is obviously going to be weighted much more heavily. It's going to get much more of the credit than just a view through. Right.
It's also not completely accurate, but at least you kind of attribute a little bit of value to each step along the way. Because again, there's tons of studies out there that show that customers do not make a purchase right away at the first click. They click on something, they go through it, then they get all these retargeting ads and all that stuff, and then they go back to the website and they finally buy something. But by then, they've seen like 3 ads, 4 emails, Facebook impressions and so forth. So you can't just give all the value, all the credit to one person. I mean, there's tons of analogies, whether you use sports analogies or whatever.
Well, it's like there's a famous saying in statistics. It goes something like, all models are terrible, but some are useful. And there's basically saying it's kind of the same thing as like Winston Churchill when he said, democracy is the worst except for all the other types of government. It's like you're never going to have this perfect system, this perfect modeling that's going to have exactly, because at the end of the day, unless you're connecting to someone's brain, you don't know exactly what triggered them to buy.
Right.
But in our opinion and experience, the weight-based is much better than, say, last click. Last click is pretty worthless because it's like, okay, yeah, maybe this is the ad that they finally clicked on and bought. But like you said, very few people buy something based on one ad they see. Normally you need to see 20 different ads and go through funnels and get email marketing before you finally buy.
Right. And when you go to other methods of advertising like billboards, like you said, or even television commercials, or even print ads, which are totally obsolete, but still, magazines have a lot of print ads, and maybe they reinforce something you've seen before. You may even start with a print ad about some product, and then the print ad has a URL, and then you go to the website, and as a result of that, they get a cookie or they track you, and then you go to Facebook, you start seeing ads for that, and then finally you buy something. Well, the print ad, who has no way of tracking you, is the first method. So on the print ad, you probably spend like $2,000 for a 2-page spread in some kind of magazine or something, and you don't know what it did.
Depends on the magazine.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah, I'm just giving you a very low rate. But let's say that you place the ad, and then you don't really know from the print ad where your attribution is, because all they tell you is that we have X number of circulation, and then the average magazine is read by 2.75 people, blah, blah, blah. And you say, okay, fine, I want to be on that magazine. But actually, you have very little tracking as far as what that ad is doing, or at all. I mean, sometimes you have a specific number for the ad or a URL for the ad or something, but frankly, that's very... Yeah,
and I mean, I read magazines still to this day, actually. I know I'm one of the few people who still reads magazines sometimes, but I don't know if I ever, see a URL in an ad and go to it.
You see, I mean, most of the ads have a URL.
They do, but I don't know if I actually go to it.
To give you an example, last weekend, you and I went to a bookstore, and I started to look at different magazines. I look at magazines from racing and automotive and other stuff, and I like to go to places where I can find international magazines. So in this case, I grabbed a magazine from the UK, and it was about racing stuff, and I looked at a system that I liked, and amazingly, it was a data acquisition system for cars. So I looked at it, and I said, oh, this is cool. So I had my phone with me, and I typed in the URL from the magazine, and then I just basically kept going through the magazine, and then I looked at the URL on my phone, just saved it there to look at it more thoroughly later. So then I started looking at all that stuff. So obviously, I haven't purchased anything, but if I did, and I start seeing ads for those products, and then I go to Facebook or I go to browsing and this and that, and they start targeting me, I may end up buying and clicking on an ad or something, or maybe just going to the website directly and purchase something, and then the attribution will probably go to either direct traffic or the Facebook ad traffic or something, but nothing goes to the original magazine that sent me to the URL or to the website, because there was no specific tracking on the magazine. So the bottom line, just to wrap it up, is that yes, advertising works. Yes, traffic and analyzing your advertising results is very important, but it's also equally important to know that no single piece of data is going to give you the full picture or an accurate picture. You need to have somebody or an agency or yourself that understands the overall picture and see, first of all, I have this amount to sell versus this amount to brand. The brand is not going to give you direct sales, but it's going to give you long-term value or long-term brand equity, which converts into sales. So just look at the picture and say, okay, if I'm investing X amount of money into advertising and every month I get this money back, granted, this channel may look better and this one may look worse. It's just not that critical whether one looks great and one looks a little less next month. There's no need to make quick adjustments every month. I mean, you need to make some global adjustments, but let the advertising do the work and then make sure that you get your ROI. Other than that, it's just not something that is going to be extremely accurate to spend a lot of time just trying to reconcile numbers coming from different channels and then seeing that they don't actually match. Any closing thoughts from you, David?
No, just, I guess, basically branding matters and everything matters, and not every ad is going to make a sale. I would say that, and I think people focus too much on the performance of individual ads, individual things, and that matters, but you have to look at the bigger picture, as we said before. The bigger picture is what matters, especially as you start expanding. When you start advertising on 6, 7, 8 different platforms and other maybe non-traditional, like we said, like a billboard or something, you have to look at the bigger picture and just look at your business as a whole rather than looking at individual marketing metrics for certain ads. You know what I mean?
Right. And the other thing that I definitely recommend to any company that is doing, obviously spending and investing money into advertising is that it's very typical to engage different agencies for different things. And it's also just as critical to make sure that all the different agencies have some kind of common point and they can somehow talk to each other, because advertising no longer works in silos where you say, okay, I have this print ad or print agency that is going to do all the print advertising, and this company is going to do all my analytics on search engine, and this guy's going to do my paid advertising on Google or social media. There needs to be some kind of common denominator so everybody talks to each other and they support each other and complement each other more than saying, oh, my campaign did better or anything, because that's not what the goal is. All agencies need to work towards improving the performance or maximizing the performance of their clients. And the way to do that is by being able to share information and say, hey, we put this pixel here, we have this ad here, and we capture this database that maybe we can upload it to Facebook and target these people for these ads and cross and remarketing them and all that. I mean, you get so much more when you have some kind of common denominator that allows you to do cross-platform targeting, which is when you target people between different platforms, and cross-domain and all that stuff. That is really incredible, especially now, like I said, with so many different channels. You can no longer just go to one and the other and treat them independently. You need to treat all the channels as one big army, and then make sure that they're all talking to each other. And with that, I think we wrap it up for today. A quick show note: I'm not sure if we will have a podcast next week. I will be probably traveling. I'm not sure exactly if I'll leave on Thursday or Friday next week. I have a trip planned already. If I don't do a podcast on Wednesday, I'll definitely do one the following week. But it depends on the schedule. So we'll see. But it'll be announced. So this one will be airing pretty soon by Friday. And until then, have a great week and weekend, everybody. Goodbye.